Yeah, I agree with you completely. So while you mentioned that, if you don't mind, give us some like couple of anecdotes from your time at Uber for a year and a half. They don't have to be funny or whatever, but like what your working experience was like. Were they putting you through 18-hour work days? And to me, it's like it's fascinating to have an insider that can speak about these things.
To be honest, it was sort of one of these amazing moments for me because I was 24 at the time, and I had just started my first week there. And in that first week, we were going to launch the airport while I was there, and we were supposed to do a price cut while I was there on the first week.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to strike all these deals with the casinos for pickup and drop-off locations. And this was back then when the only pickup and drop-off software was the airport software. But the strip was effectively 45 airports all in one location. So it was a whole mess there. And I just remember having this moment where I turned to the team that had hired me and said, look, I'm like 2 days into the job and you want me to do all of these things. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? I mean, I'm 2 days in. What do you want me to do? And I think there was this sort of empowering moment where I was told, look, if we hired you because we trust you, do whatever you think is best. If you didn't do your research and you made an uninformed decision, we will fire you. But if you have a reason to why you do something and it makes sense and you do the analysis, do what you want to, essentially. And I think to me, that was sort of this really empowering experience when I was that age, because I'd worked in jobs beforehand where people just don't trust somebody that age.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's also the problem with the company is when you have 1,000 24-year-olds who are doing whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
At some point, that doesn't really work, does it? Right?
Yeah. Too many headless chickens in there. But but you built the Vegas operations, right? Ultimately.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it must have been interesting times. I mean,
it was just crazy because they have sort of CES that would come to town. So you'd have 200,000 people all there for a conference. You'd have EDC that was an hour out into the desert that ends at 7 a.m. in the morning. How do you set that up? And the craziest one to me was always just the Las Vegas Strip, getting a bunch of drunk people to find their way to the back of the car park lot to find the right driver. And guess what? It's also Uber pool. So you need to get 3 drunk people all to show up at the same time at the back. And I think a lot of my craziest experiences were just trying out Uber pool as a driver at 3 a.m. on the Las Vegas Strip. I'm sure you all know that, but you see the craziest stuff. You
tasted your own medicine then. You tasted your own medicine, because I say this all the time. I think from Dara all the way down to everybody mandatorily should get out there and drive for a week every year to feel what the drivers feel, because I do it. I mean, I still drive. I know what I'm doing out there, but then, I don't think these execs care. They go like, hey, yeah, there's a Uber driver. I'm like, no, bro, I'm dealing with a lot of garbage out here. So you need to come out, because the algo you wrote is torturing my ass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And come, get some of your own medicine. And then maybe the disconnect that exists today in rideshare between driver communities and the top guys or coders at Uber is as wide as ever it's been. Ever.
I think also it's like you can't just go and do one trip every couple months. Going and doing one trip doesn't mean anything. You know what I think they should do? And this is something that I actually ran this experiment with my sort of a team when they were here in person, which is you're going to go out and you're going to drive for a couple hours today, but what you eat as a team for lunch and dinner can only be paid out of the earnings you make. Like, you need to have someone have a financial stake in the driving, right? Because saying, hey, I did one trip and I took you don't feel the pressure of having to take the right trip. You don't feel the pressure of, if the trip went 30 minutes over for food delivery, why that was a bad thing.
Yep.
So I agree very much with you, but I think it needs to go further.
Absolutely.
Am I the only one picturing that? I know Chris is maybe a little bit. Am I the only one picturing here that if this happened, it's like the next Purge movie? I mean,
well,
you can't just put these there's executive day. We're gonna have like a holiday, and that there's a
imagine the door, you get a knock on the door, and then it's there delivering my burger. I'd be like, yeah, buddy, come on in, have a drink with me.
We gotta have a little chat there, DK.
What would you do?
Come on in, buddy. Sorry, go ahead, David.
That's saying, Chris, what would you do if that happened?
Oh, geez, if honestly, I don't know. I mean, like, it would be good if they did that, because then, I mean, the whole thing is too, one of the things that we say to provide better service as a driver, take some rides so you know what it's like to be on the other end of it. You're the passenger. So for these execs, for these workers, especially those that in your situation where you're like, you have to do this and come up with a plan, and we don't care what you're doing, but as long as you have the reasons and the opinions why you're doing it, and the backup to be able to prove that it's good or bad or whatever it might be, that just gives you, like you said, you have 1,000 other 24-year-olds or 1,000 other coders who are kind of coming up with their own thing, doing their own thing. But how do they know what it's like for the particular drivers that they're affecting? So yeah, they should probably be out there testing exactly what they're doing and have that real firsthand knowledge in order to know, is this going to make a driver's life easier? Is this going to make the algorithm better? Is this going to make the service better overall? If you can get all of those answered as a positive, then yeah, then it's probably a good thing, or something should be implemented at that point. But if you go in there and you say, hey, look, I tried it out, it was something was wrong with it, I don't know what, but then you could go back to the drawing board and maybe adjust a few things to make sure it's properly working, versus just, oh, here we go, here's the rollout, and there's that.
Yeah. I also think there's a big difference between like knowing a problem and feeling a problem.
Yep.
Right? Like, when you think about a reason as to why it's annoying, that's just intellectual, right? But like until you feel like personally affronted, like it's just not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not.
David, there is this huge belief in the driver community that we are just numbers. Nobody gives a shit. Okay, one comes, 10 more are ready to replace him, right? And that's been the Ubers, and Lyfts, and every one of these gig companies' attitude, right? Everybody's replaceable. I'll deactivate you for whatever reason I want, and there's no recourse most of the time. I mean, right? And that's where I see look, I think the gig economy is great, right? And it does wonderful things. And I've interviewed a whole bunch of people, and has given me new respect about the gig economy, because there are people busting their asses, feeding their families, doing, making money at their own time, right? We don't want this to go away, but also the disconnect that exists between the C-suites, and the coders and these drivers is so wide that Uber does good things, Lyft does decent things, and DoorDash may have done decent things. I don't know if any, but the problem is their perception is so bad. The way they put things out is so bad that I'm shocked that their PR departments do such a horrible job of putting out okay, the biggest thing that has happened last 2 months in Uber world, Uberland, is upfront destination. People are even complaining about upfront destination. I'm going like, what is there to complain about upfront destination, man? You're seeing where you're going. That's what you wanted. They gave it to you. Now you're complaining again. So the thing is,
on those
perception of Uber is so shady.
More the fare itself.
Yeah, the fare, but still, there has to be, maybe there is some exchange, right? But the perception is so bad that these companies are shady, they're evil, they're corrupt. They're all these wonderful worlds I can put together, and I'm going like, they're not. Like, if you were at Uber, if I was Uber, man, I would be doing the same shit that they're doing today. Okay, I have my opinion of what I need to do is diametrically opposed to what the driver wants. Driver wants more money. Uber goes, I got to charge more and pay less. How do I figure that out? I
really believe it's sort of viewing it from the wrong angle. Right? I can give you a story from when I was there. So when I was there, I did a lot of driver incentives, right? So we did stuff from, do X trips to get Y payout. We experimented with almost like a lottery where every trip you'd get a ticket and somebody would win $20,000 a week, right? That was always a fun phone call to make. I'd call someone and be like, hey, you got $20,000. And, that was always nice. We ended up not doing that because it ended up being the best performing incentive and everybody loved it. But frankly, only 3 people would get $20,000. And before that, we were spending $200,000 a week on incentives. So it was one of those where we saved a lot of money, but that didn't feel right. But we did a lot of these large-scale driver incentives. And for me, I was sitting there on a computer crunching numbers in Excel. To me, it was sort of like running a bunch of tests to determine what made the most sense, right? And when I was in the process of leaving Uber, some drivers reached out to me and said, I felt like I was being played guinea pig with. I'd done many more trips than my friend, but my friend was getting incentives that were 3 times more than mine. Every week we felt like we were being jerked around with, like, what was going on? I'm like, wow, I guess I just never really thought about it that way. Yeah. For me, I was just running a large scale experiment, tweaking a bunch of numbers to try and get an outcome. And I just never really thought about this other perspective. Right. Yeah. And I think really that's the same thing when I go back to the Doordash situation. It's almost exactly the same thing. We're tweaking a bunch of things to try and balance the marketplace, but you're completely missing the main viewpoint into it.
Yeah, because all these execs, all these coders, and including you, I'm sure you're a software engineer, right? So they enjoy their services as consumers very much, but they don't know that if there is no drivers, you're not getting your burrito. Nobody's taking you to LAX. Nobody's doing any of this for you. So I think that's what the disconnect is, that these guys still think the gig economy will survive without drivers. I call biggest bullshit on that on the planet. Yeah. There is no drivers. There's no gig economy. Please treat these people with more respect and potentially more earnings. But the thing is that disconnect is as wide as ever. And I don't know why. I don't know why that still exists.
All right, thanks for watching. That short little clip was from our live stream, Show Me the Money Club with Sergio and myself, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you subscribe, turn on all notifications so you'll be notified when we go live, as well as all of our awesome content. Make sure to check out this video right here, which will take you to the entire live stream, or check out this video right there. All right, drive smart, everyone.